Russ, in our second installment of Matt's Maps, the California edition, we stopped at Tesla. Now, I was very unfamiliar with Tesla. I knew they were electric cars. I had no idea how incredible these. I'd call them almost works of art. And since I've noticed every Tesla I've seen on the road, but I really appreciate you introducing me to Tesla. And if you could speak a little bit to what we're about to see.
Okay. Tesla's made a lot of headline in the news. I think the first car came out in 2012. I was very interested in them even before they came out with their Model S. And they had a car prior to that, but it was a two-seater, but it wasn't mass produced like this one is, the Model S, and now they got I think it's the Model 3 that just came out, and I got to see a couple of those here. I recently went back to California, and those had just come out, so I've seen some of those. Got Model X, which is one you'll see in this video that both Matt and I drove, and Elon Musk is over that company as well as SpaceX and a couple others, and you've probably been seeing his name a lot in the news lately. He's kind of like the Steve Jobs now of the Silicon Valley, and he just has a lot going on. Very smart person, but the Tesla, if you've never seen one, never driven one, there's stores in Nashville, Atlanta. They sell at malls. They're not your typical dealership, so you need to order online for that matter. But if you want to go drive one, I was out here recently because this been a little bit of time since we were out in San Jose. I went back out for some nominum training, which is the video we did earlier, and I went by another mall. We actually went to the headquarters. This is Tesla, where they manufacture the cars, and that's where Matt and I rode in the Model X, which is their SUV version. Well, I was back out, and I went, and I don't have any video of this, but I wish I could have had some, but because it was fun. I went to the mall, I was talking with the sales guy, and he let me drive a Model S. Now, they make currently the fastest production car right now, and I think 2.3 or 2.1 second, 0 to 60 in 2.1 to 2.3 seconds. And I got to do 2.5 seconds. I did one that was 4.5, and then I drove another one doing 2.4. Huge difference. If you've ever been to a theme park, rode a roller coaster, doesn't even compare. I can tell you because another day I went to and rode a roller coaster, and I wasn't thrilled after driving that car because it's just amazing what it can do. But aside from that, the technology it has, the autonomous driving, where it almost drives itself. You're just there, with your hands kind of on the wheel, and it just follows the traffic and stays within the lanes and stops when it needs to stop and goes when it needs to go. That's neat, and it's amazing that. And it's been talked about quite a bit here in the news lately, but seeing it firsthand is different.
Very different, and when the salesman asks you to let go and let the car drive you down the street, that it's definitely hard, but it did a great job.
It did, and it watches the traffic in front of you, and it'll back off. And there's some. If you've never watched Tesla, go to YouTube, type in Tesla. There's thousands of videos on there, and like I said, I've been just a fan for them. Just wish I could afford one. They're not a cheap car at all, but they got one that's coming out that's a little cheaper than their Model S, but definitely worth checking out. And if you start seeing some of the charging stations popping up around.
So I saw they were actually working on them in Cookeville. Around that Jackson Plaza in Cookeville a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
So they're definitely coming to this area.
There's some in Chattanooga, and hopefully we'll see some in this area, but definitely worth checking out. Hope you enjoy this video, and just being there in the Fremont area, which is where a car that comes in as a big old rolled up sheet of metal in that factory and comes back out with, you know, ready to go to somebody's home and or business, wherever the cars are going. So the factories, just watch some of the videos there on YouTube that talk about it and how amazing it is. So.
Well, we hope you enjoy looking at this Tesla as much as we did.
All right, we're here at Tesla Motors, and this is the headquarters of the Tesla Model S, Model X, and the Model 3 when it's starting to be production. So Matt and I just test drove a Model X. We had a great experience. Matt actually let it do the kind of autonomous driving. He took his hands off the wheel and it stayed in the road and knew what cars were in front of it. So it's really neat, and it's got the power is just amazing on these cars. So we're out here for the Internet of Things, and one of the things that is going to be used in the autonomous cars, and so it's just amazing what's out there today. So we're going to show you what the car looks like, and the guy's going to be talking about it a little bit.
That's it. If I give it another 2 taps.
Which one are we looking at here?
This one here.
This white one here.
And then actually with those wing doors, I can open those up from the key. So 2 presses here, and you'll see that wing door coming up and open. Right now it's got plenty of space, so it's able to open up wide. You can see the double hinges on the door there. And this car here is a 7-seater layout. We build it with 5, 6, and 7. So just depending on your need. 7 seats for maximum storage. And then you'll see you're able to press once there to move the 2nd row seat forward. That's how you would easily get into that 3rd row. As you can see, the 7-seater, not quite an adult seat back there. I wouldn't want to sit back there if I was going like to LA. But the front seat is my favorite. And you'll see each of the seats are on a monopost mount, so they're elevated. So whether it's storage or just tucking your feet underneath there, you're able to do that. Okay. And then if you give it a press on the back arrow there, that'll bring it back. And we can always move it to its forward position. Let me see. That'd be as far forward as it would ride. Typically, if it's adults in the 3rd row, people will go with the 6-seater, because then this area here is open. Okay. And so you have an aisleway, exactly, where you can stretch your legs. Okay. And you'll see up front here, this is one of the really impressive parts of Model X. You have a long sloping windshield, which comes all the way up and over you. So when you're sitting there, especially in that autopilot mode, you're able to really just sit back and monitor and enjoy that openness. You can see one of those cameras here actually right in the B-pillar. And that's one of the advantages that we have by producing the autopilot and full self-driving functionality, as well as producing the vehicle. We can integrate those cameras nice and sleek.
That is nice. Now, where'd you say the camera was?
Right in the B-pillar here.
Oh, okay, right there.
And then you got another one over on the side decal. So this one being side back facing.
I see that.
And then you got 3 more right up front there.
Okay.
A total of 8 around the vehicle. On a road trip, actually this here is one of our supercharger stations, but we have a whole network across the country. Right. That's what you would use. It takes about 15 to 45 minutes to charge the car back up at those stations, and you're normally near food or shopping. So So we're not just sitting there waiting. You hop out, grab a bite to eat, and you get back on the highway.
Is there a charge for those?
Yes. Previously it was something that we provided, but now there is a cost. It's state by state, but here it's 20 cents per kilowatt hour. And the easier way to look at that is about $1 for 15 miles.
Okay.
Versus when you're charging at home, it's $1 for about 25 miles.
Okay.
So not a huge difference.
Okay.
But normally we would charge overnight off of a 240, so similar to like a washer or a dryer would run off of. You just plug right into the wall, and it's 8 hours from empty, so that's why it's perfect for charging overnight.
Okay. And so that's $1 for 25 miles?
$1 for 25 miles, exactly, or the full battery being about $10.
Okay. And that full battery with the large battery goes just over 300?
300, exactly, about 310.
Okay.
And let me see if we have the charge cable here. I can show you what it looks like. While you're out on the road, you would mostly be using those supercharger stations, and then like we said at home, that's when you would use the charge cable here. So you'll see the 240 piece pop on, so you'll take the 110 off.
So the supercharging station that you can go from empty to full in 45 minutes or less.
Exactly. And so that's basically the idea, is for as you're going down the highway to be able to pull off, plug in at that station, and then either grab a bite to eat or shop like we said during that 45 minutes, then get back in the car, continue on your road trip. One of the helpful things that the car does through the touchscreen, when you route in a road trip, so say something like Los Angeles from here or Tahoe, it knows that you're not going to make it there without charging, so it's going to start to calculate that trip, and it's going to route you through the stations.
What about
and let you know your charge
throughout
time.
the country? Do you have, can you make it pretty much anywhere?
Yes,
with
so
your stations?
you can get throughout the entire United States. Those stations are typically about 100 to 150 miles apart, so you could even leave from the network and come back to it with that battery being about 250, so it's easy to travel. But yeah, it covers the entire United States, branches up into Canada on the west and the east, but not quite linked yet, and then a few stations in Mexico, and pretty soon that'll meet up with Texas and Florida and California.
Right. So it'll actually help you plan your route around getting to one of those stations.
Exactly. And so that's what it'll do, is realize, okay, there's not enough range for me to get there without charging, and so it'll instantly route you through those stations and then give you that charge time to wait for. That way you're not having to do that planning, as well as, just as important, you have that instant confirmation. We call it range anxiety, so that nervousness that you might not make it there. With that, you would know right off the bat, okay, I'm going to get there, and I'm going to get there with 20 or 30 miles left. So you have that instant confirmation.
What about, how does this, what's the drive system like on this?
Yes, so it's a dual motor, as what we call it. It's basically all-wheel drive, except for there's no mechanical linkage in between. So those motors are able to communicate through software, and then it's actually more efficient than a rear-wheel drive system. But all-wheel drive, you get those same benefits of being able to drive through the snow, as well as that improved handling. But basically a motor in the rear, motor up front, as well as those batteries all through the floor. That's what makes up the drivetrain of the car.
Okay.
But those batteries are about 1,500 pounds. So when you are driving the vehicle, you feel that nice low center of gravity. Really helps out with the handling. Makes it feel a bit different, especially in the SUV, because it can't bend or flex because it's made out of metal.
Right. I guess the all-important question, what's the price?
Yes, so it starts at $70,000. Here you do have tax incentives, so a federal incentive of $7,500, as well as a state incentive. I'm not sure what it would be for you guys in Tennessee, but for us here in California, it's a $2,500 state incentive. And then they're made to order, so you do have choices to add from there, things like the autopilot, different exteriors, different interiors, or a larger battery, but starting at $70,000.
So with the autopilot in today's technology, the autopilot, you said you get on the freeway, and then what happens?
Yeah, so you get the car onto the highway. When you activate the autopilot from there, the car is able to pace and steer for you. You're basically monitoring the system rather than having to do the full driving.
Okay.
So the car is able to take a turn. It's able to slow as you approach traffic. Basically that full pacing, full steering there. And then you're more so looking for one-off situations. So something like a deer coming across the highway, that's when you would take over, interrupt, and bring the car to a stop.
So you don't have to have your hands on the wheel?
You do still keep your hands to the wheel. It actually checks in from time to time. So you get a little message on the touchscreen, which tells you it says, please grab the wheel. And basically what it wants is for you to put a little bit of force in the wheel. It's making sure you're still there.
Okay.
One of the things
Not
that
asleep.
make sure you're not asleep, exactly. Okay. One of the things we were catching flack for early on was that we weren't doing enough to make sure that the driver was still attentive, still paying attention.
Okay.
So that's why they added things like that check-in, where you need to grab the wheel, let the car feel that you're still there.
Okay. So you can probably look away in that you talk to your passenger, interact that way? Maybe
You're,
not
I'd say,
supposed to?
less focused on the highway. Definitely a lower level of functioning because you're not having to do that pacing or that steering so much so. But you're still watching the road for the most part. Actually, most of your information is shown right on the dashboard. So rather than a heads-up display, we jokingly call it heads-down display. Because you can see things like the car in front of you. You can see when that left lane or that right lane is open for you to make a lane change. So mostly you're kind of switching between looking at the road, looking at that display, and then just enjoying that open windshield. But yeah, you're definitely doing a lot less than you would be if you were doing the full drive.
Do you have any problems with it?
No, I would say some of the things that we learned early on was that we needed to do more data collecting on the sides. That's why those side cameras are there. With the first implementation, it was just one camera up front, and then it used the parking sensors to get all the data on the side of the car. So adding those cameras to the side, I'd say it's something that they changed over time just to improve functionality.
And you said that you're constantly collecting data back from the car.
Correct. Yeah, we call it fleet learning. So constantly improving that technology from what we're getting from those cars that are already out on the road.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
I see.
One of the other changes that we made before the camera that's up front was primary, and then you have a sensor up front in the front fascia, and that was secondary. Now that sensor being primary, it's ultrasonic, and then that camera being secondary, more so confirming what that sensor is seeing. Just a change that we made over time, largely because now you're able to see multiple cars out ahead of you, because the ultrasonic sensor can basically bounce those rays off of the ground. So it's not just sensing that car directly in front of you, but can also sense 2 or 3 cars out.
Okay.
Versus with the camera being primary, it's just visual and
So
blocking.
can it detect that 2 cars ahead just hit the brakes?
Actually, yes. If you Google Tesla accident prediction, there's a really impressive video where the emergency braking alert comes on before the accident even happens. Because the car is constantly doing that calculation, it knows the instant that physically that car does not have enough space to stop before that next vehicle. And once it was able to realize that, it called for that braking to be applied.
So it's not only sensing that one right in front of you, it's on ahead.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that video is very impressive to see. It's crazy because you hear the alert come on and you can see the brakes being applied because you can see the visual on the screen. And then about a half a second later, you see the crash right in front. And the car's able to come to a stop well ahead of it. So it's very impressive.
And you said that data you're collecting, the future of that is for this car to be
fully autonomous, exactly. So to be able to integrate that functionality, be able to reiterate it through the software updates. So rather than just the first implementation being what people have to work with, to be able to go back and continue to improve it. That's kind of the idea.
What's the future of Tesla?
I'd say that full self-driving being the next thing that we're working on, because we already have that hardware there, so developing the software to go along with it, that way people can be taken all the way from point A to point B. From there, also Model 3 being our next car. So we have Model S, Model X on the road now, but Model 3 being our mass market car coming out at the end of the year.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, so more of a commuter style vehicle. So in comparison to Model S there, a little bit smaller of a sedan, more so something you could drive every day from, say, a lower price point as well, so more available, because for some people Model S, Model X cost being a limiting factor.
Yeah.
But the price point coming down to $35,000, like I said, more of a commuter style design, so maybe not as much as far as luxury or functionality.
This is Tesla's Model S. This is a P100, and that P stands for performance. You know that it's a performance because of these red calipers here on the brakes. This car will do 2.5 seconds, 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds. Extremely fast, fastest production car ever. And so we didn't get to drive this one, but we drove something that was really fast, and Matt and I really enjoyed it. But this one, if your pockets are deep enough, it starts about $130,000, $140,000. But just think what all you can do as far